gentleman who I usually present with, his name is Kelly Brown. He's a superintendent in our board. He wasn't able to join us today. He sends his best wishes. That's Kelly Brown, who's applying for a job next year. Super guy. And as I was preparing once again and refining my material from last year, I looked at the program of items that you folks had a chance to sit in on earlier today in the session. And it was quite interesting because there's a lot of really neat stuff that, you know, as a 12-year teacher in the board and a corporate trainer previous to that, you know, it's really neat that you have an opportunity to have people guide you through this stuff and have a chance to experiment before you get pitched out into the wild. So as I'm looking at the different workshops, I'm thinking, wow, that's neat. You're going to learn a lot of cool stuff. And then I'm going to come in and throw up a big stop sign and say, whoa, and be the gadfly. So again, I'm not going to, if you're waiting for me to drop the secret to spectacular teaching, you come to the wrong guy. But what I hope you leave here with today after my comments is at least a framework for thinking about how you can integrate IT into your teaching practice based on super sound methodology that you'll have an excellent exposure to this year at the faculty, and knowledge of curriculum, of course, and as well a stellar relationship with your students, because without those things in place, no amount of technology there over the top is going to save a crappy lesson, quite simply put. So that's what I'm going to hopefully get you thinking about, and you probably have already thought about that. You may have already, you know, flamed out in a lesson or two and had a chance to reflect and change for the next time. So based on my 12 years using technology in various different teaching roles, I'm hoping I can get you thinking a little bit more like a teacher who uses technology to further students' progress. So that's where, I guess, when I put this image up on the screen, the poor lady here, she's mopping her brow, she's sweating, it made her kind of ill, I think. It's an image, yeah, sorry, squeamish. It's an image that I found way back when I started teaching, and I was setting up some web material, and I just, yeah, it does look kind of violent, I guess, but if you look very closely, it's rezzed out here. It's not a great high-resolution picture. But you see, out of the back of the child's head is flying a grand piano, a soccer ball. If you look more closely, there's some other education-related items that are, you know, exploding forth from that young child's brain in a, I think, a very telling graphic. And at the front end of the face is the computer. Not that computer is the only source of knowledge and technology that kids and teachers use. But I thought I've used it quite often because it really, I think, sums up the way I approach using technology as a teaching tool and as a learning tool. So, agenda for today, introductions. I'm sorry Kelly's not here, but I'll tell you a little bit about him and why I feel important, although he's not here, that I mentioned him, because he's been instrumental in my growth as a teacher, generally, but also in using IT as a teaching and learning tool in our board. So Kelly's currently a superintendent, he's a supervisory officer, and the reason it was neat for Kelly to offer to come and help me speak last year, and I think the year previous, or a couple years ago, is that I was providing a classroom perspective for how I implemented IT in my teaching practice. And although Kelly started as a principal at the school I'm currently at, and has now moved on to an SO position, it was really quite an honor for him to offer come in and provide an administrator's perspective, because we are the frontline people. We will be on the front trenches working with the kids, helping move them forward. But your administrator, whether it's a school administrator or board administrator, their job is to remove impediments to your teaching so that you can provide the best office experience possible to the kids. So, you know, it was neat when Kelly was here. I said, before I started the first time, I said, Kelly, I'm going to say some things that might upset you. You're not going to fire me. He said, no, you got to go half an hour with the grace, but we'll talk again tomorrow. And I managed to not say anything too bad that really affected my performance. But it was neat that he was here to give his perspective as an SO. And as a teacher in the classroom, yeah, that's your little kingdom for an hour a day, or if you're in secondary, or you know, the whole day if you're in an elementary classroom. That is, you know, you have control over that for that period of time. But the implications of you doing anything in the classroom, whether it's tech related or not, governed by board policy, school policy, your own personal viewpoint on things, the curriculum, provincial policy. Those sorts of things have an impact. And the things you do have a reverse impact. So you've got to be conscious about these factors. And myself, been at Whitfield for now 9 years, or 10 years, and previous to that, worked in Ottawa. Taught everything from outdoor ed and English second language to geography, history, civics and careers. And for the last 9 years or so, I've been teaching co-op with a shift this year to high-risk kids. So I'm focusing on students at risk as part of student success initiatives in the province. And in all the teaching I've done, since I started as a professional teacher in Ontario, there's been some sort of technology element to it. Whether it was GPS in the geography classroom to philosophy learning, management systems, and all the other stuff. So I really try and integrate some sort of technology in all of my teaching, where it's appropriate. And I just, as a point of note, you'll notice the specs from my very first Mac. And it's nice to see that Nipsing and all of you folks have drunk the apple Kool-Aid. That was my first computer, and I had to abandon that for Windows for a while, but it's nice to be back on a free. So that was, that was my first machine. And many of us have devices in our pockets or on our wrists that absolutely annihilate that. And that was a good computer then. It was $3,500. Imagine what you could buy for that kind of money these days. So objectives for today. Always good to start with the end in mind. Where are we heading? I just want you to think about stuff. And think about thinking about stuff. Because you've already been on a couple of teaching placements, you have formed an opinion of yourself as an educator, and you have had some experiences, positive and maybe some negative, and you're starting to think like a teacher. You're already teachers, but you're starting to have to think like a teacher every single day. Marshall McLuhan, because my background is in corporate communications and marketing, as I was learning that particular field, Marshall McLuhan, some of you may have heard of him, a Canadian who really has very, very leading edge theories about communication and media and how they affect society and learning and interaction. So if I have any idols other than my bossy, Marshall McLuhan would be it. Because even in 1967 and thereabouts, he was pretty far ahead of his time. There are a couple other names that will come up throughout the lecture who, there are people who I admire for their thoughts, and you can certainly go check them out because and decide for your own whether or not they provide you with any value. But McLuhan is one of them. Long dead, but again, a lot of the things that he spoke about and thought about and shared are relevant as we march through day-to-day life. Now, quick survey. 20 people who are in their 20s, please raise your hands. Okay, hands down. People in their 30s, please. Okay. 40s? Yes. 40s the new 20. And this is the new afro. Those who are more mature than 40. Anyone? 50? No? No one cares? 29, I guess, is the age, right? And with that survey out of the way, hands up if you have a laptop. Everybody, hands up if you have a touch or an iPad or something like that. So, wow. Some sort of smartphone device. Hands up if you got all of these things. So, there's a fair complement of technology across a fair range of ages here. And I just, an interesting note, got up this morning, my daughters were in a local play production, and they were up pretty early this morning, oddly enough. And as Madeline walked out of her bedroom, I said, it was 6:30 or so, I said, Madeline, Daddy's going up to the university today. Do you mind if I borrow your touch? She looks at me. No. Okay. Well, and I said, well, why not? Can I use it? Like, please, that needs the timer because I'm doing a lecture and I need to see, how far along the session I am. She said no. And I said, okay, well, I know it's yours, but do you mind me asking why you need it today? I'm going skiing. And then she walked away. And she's not. And so I scratched my head and said, okay, I guess we use my watch. But that, at the age of 9, my eldest daughter is 11, they have these devices and they don't know any different. They're part of their everyday lives. Yes, with limits, of course, but they don't know life without a laptop in each room in the house. They don't know life without at least one song on the building. They don't know life without a VCR. What the heck is that? PVR, I understand. VCR. So, again, although you're 20, 30, 40, and we're fairly well-educated people and fairly worldly young guys, we still, as we advance through time, we still lose perspective that the kids who we're teaching have. Kids who don't know any other experience. We have to appreciate that and learn how to build it into our economies so that we can address them where they're at. I found this video a couple years ago, and although I should try and find something that's more current, there are a couple things I want to comment about it on the back end, but it's about 5 minutes long. Some of you may have seen it, and there are a series of videos produced by the same institution that are quite accurate in terms of thinking about IT in society, in terms of education, but as well in a broader sense. So I'll fire that up. Trust me. Once again, I'm reluctant to give this one up because although the students depicted there are much like yourselves, university students, that you can replace that group of students now with a group of grade 8s, or a group of grade 6s, or a group of grade 4s, and especially the comments about technology would still be relevant. It's still relevant. And some of you may have seen it already in your classrooms where you have a particularly active school in terms of technology, and that's where the kids are. I mean, yes, that's not consistent with the province or the country, but you may see some of the same habits in terms of technology where your much younger students are concerned. And so, again, I'm hesitant to give this one up because it's just that it's not that the use of technology is changing, it's the age at which students start using it and it becomes pervasive. And that, again, I'm not asking you to decide whether, I'm not going to tell you whether I think that's good or bad. I want you to think about that just in general and you decide. So then and now, well, we have, there are 2 pictures that are fired up there. My second car, my first one was a 63 Beetle, my second one was a 74 Civic. And it got me around quite nicely for a big number of years. It was not stylish, it was not warm, it was not comfortable, it did not go fast. It did none of those things to excess, but what it did is transport me fairly reliably from A to B. And flash forward a good number of years, we have a very similar looking car, Honda Fit. Achieves the same goals, gets drivers and passengers from point A to point B and there and in between. Does so in a far more efficient manner, probably more, a good measure more comfort, more amenities, those sorts of things. The same goal is achieved. But there, you know, it just shows that when we talk about education, we have to consider what our main objective is. And there are many different means of getting it. We can take the work ethic approach, we can take the high-tech approach, but as educators, as leaders in the classroom, we have to decide which is going to be best for our students. How do we do that? Knowing what technology is great. Being willing to take risks and use the technology and planning the technology also great. But again, you have to become an expert at deciding which path to take. Trial and error and a good lack of knowledge are your best allies in this case. So, I'm not a student of math. I don't understand, I'm not a very strong math student. My wife is, she's a math teacher. And I want you to read that, please, and think about exponents. Kind of wish that would happen with our paychecks once in a while. If you think of the step of this pace of technological advances, are there any math, students of math in the room? Raise your hands, please. I'm not strong in math. I'm not strong in math, but that seems like a pretty quick pace to me. And being able to keep up with that as a teacher, as a classroom leader, as an administrator for a school or board, that's kind of scary. That is kind of scary. Exciting, yes, but scary, because it's not going to slow down. I mentioned my daughters have fourth generation Texas. Happy birthday to you. They can have, so they have to give me some money, but we decided it's time. My wife has the second gen, and I thought, I don't have anything yet. I'm waiting for the next big leap. But when you look at the life cycle, it's just that tiny little tool that most of us take for granted these days. The life cycle is about 18 months. 18 months. And when Apple says with the iPhone, we've changed everything again, for now, and then for another 18 months, or until the next OS update. So the pace of change is blistering, and it's not going to slow down. The machines that we bought at the beginning of the year, they are now effectively obsolete. They will last us a long time, they will be very serviceable, but they are effectively obsolete when you consider the exponential pace of technological change. So as a teacher, do you have to change your teaching practice every 18 months? Again, that's a question you're going to have to grapple with. I can barely change my socks every day, rather change an entire approach to teaching every semester versus 18 months, a year and a half to adopt this kind of change. You're going to have to decide for yourself based on, again, solid teaching practice, knowledge of the curriculum, the relationship with your students. How do we react to this? Do we embrace it or resist it? I mean, again, the answer is yours, and sorry I'm not providing the answers. I've chosen to embrace it to a degree. And I'll tell you what the deciding factor is, or you might be able to figure out as I continue on. We'll skip that because I'm running short on time. Part of, there's my beautiful bride. She's delightful, smart, pretty, and I think she doesn't see very well because she decided to marry me, but I worship her every breath, and there I am, kneeling at her feet. We're at one of my favorite places in the world. My in-laws have a place in Florida. It's a small little apartment on the beach, and we've been fortunate enough to be invited there many times. whenever I do visit Siesta Key, I really, since the last time, we go every about a year and a half or so, and I really make an effort to collect local papers, both the state papers and the city papers, and then the local, small little, usually, little leaflet papers to get caught up on what's been going on since I was last there. I try and fit in. I try and understand what's going on. And as teachers in the classroom, we're tourists, just like Jen and I are right here. We're tourists. Although most of you, a good bulk of you, I'd say 90% of people are 20 or something, and you might identify with my statement. You folks know technology. You were basically born with a handheld, essentially. You don't know being unconnected, I would argue. But as tourists in the classroom, we've got to acclimatize ourselves, familiarize ourselves with where our kids are. So digital native, and that's what anybody under the age of 20 could be classified as such. And Wikipedia, the bank of all that is good and perfect and just and true, tells us that a digital native is a person who's grown up with technology, who it's an immersion type thing. They just don't know it any differently. And we are tourists. Interestingly enough, when I crafted this particular presentation several years ago, there was no, and there still is no Wikipedia entry for digital tourist. There is no entry for that particular term. I should actually coin it. There is now, recently, a term called digital immigrant. So, similar. But did they not want us? Is that why nobody decided to put that up there? Did the natives not want us to join them? You wonder. But it's our job to make ourselves familiar with where they're at, our kids. And try and, meet them where they're at. In the course of my work, I get to drive around quite a bit. I teach co-ops, so I live in the building a lot. And I listen to CDC and I listen to Spark whenever I can, it's on. And I've underlined the scary words. I didn't make them red because I didn't want to scare you too bad. But as you go through your methods classes and go on placement and do your best to really train yourself to think in terms of the INFUSION University lesson plan format, these words probably should scare you as a teacher. Who's supposed to control the classroom? What do you think? Entangled complex, not content. What do you mean not content? Isn't that all there is? Content? There's the F word, flux. Holy flux. Not always true. This is scary. Not absolute, never static. How am I supposed to get anything done? But that's what we've got to work with. And this guy, Mark Fetterman, Dr. Fetterman, although when you listen to him speak, he's absolutely brilliant. And I've actually had to look up a bunch of words that he uses to fully understand his lectures. But the ideas that he puts forth are really incredible in terms of reframing how we think about technology in society as teachers and as just regular middle-class kids, as parents, as employees, as employers. But those are an interesting title. Why Johnny and Jamie can't read and why Mr. and Mrs. Smith can't teach. It's a fairly long, if you have a couple hours on your hands, it's a fairly long paper. So I read through it in fits and starts. This is one passage that I had to take out, I had to borrow. Because as a teacher, an experienced teacher, it's scary. As somebody who's just learning the business of teaching in a formal fashion, that should scare. I mean, it should scare you. Nothing wrong with being scared, but that's scary stuff. Because when you hear the word methods, it implies something fairly, lockstep and rigid, you think, until you get into a classroom. So, aren't we supposed to control these things? To a degree, yes. There are certain things we can control, and there are certain things, in spite of our best efforts, we will never be able to control. You can use that lesson planning format and do it perfectly, I gave an analogy in the first talk, but I'm not going to use that one again.
Oh, come on.
I'm a grad of, I was BA 98, and using that lesson planning format, at the risk of offending somebody, it was like giving birth. With all due reverence to the ladies in the room who have had children or are planning to have kids, it was the most excruciating experience time after time that I've ever had. It was brutal. I hear some laughing. But even then, even spending all that time in that lesson planning format and trying to consider all the different factors that I was building into the lesson, you know, there was always the chinchilla that jumped out of the terrarium right as you started teaching science, or that kid who decided to throw up on the table. You don't plan for that sort of stuff. Or the kid who's way smarter than you, which you're going to encounter. Right? So, we won't have a chance to share, but I'm sure some of you are reflecting on your teaching placements. And I wouldn't have known otherwise. You'll have to consider these things and be comfortable with knowing that, you know what, there are some things that you just ought not to control, and there are some things that you just won't be able to control. But there are a good number of critical things that you do have control over. I'll tell you what those are. I think. This is a big one. You're always going to have students, otherwise you wouldn't have a job. Hands up if you've read The Lord of the Flies. Yeah, so it's a classic, it's a standard. Remember, the conch essentially gave whoever had the conch the authority to speak. It gave that person, at least for a short time, the floor. You, as a teacher, who's comfortable with their methodology, who's comfortable with their curriculum area, should be able to practice handing the conch over once in a while. Because, as you well know, you're in a classroom as the adult, relatively intelligent, well prepared. There are 30 of them or so, and they will always be better than you. You add that up, 30 little munchkins or 30 teenagers, collectively, they will crush you creatively, they will crush your energy, they will crush your knowledge every single time. I'll bet on the kids every single time. So you have to accept that. You have to become comfortable with that, because if you fight it, you're going to be very frustrated. Don't fight it, use it. It's a fantastically powerful teaching tool. Not every day, because somebody will question your ability to keep a job. But you got to know when it's time to hand the conch over once in a while. Elliot Maisie is one person who, over the course of my 12-year career, I've had a chance to do a bit of reading about. Participated once in a webinar with him. I didn't actually add anything of value, I just creeped it out. But this was one phrase that he coined at that particular time on that webinar that really, sunk in. The democratization of information. In McLuhan's time, in the 60s, in order to get something published, you had to have a lot of money, you had to have some connections, you had to have a bunch of letters after your name to prove that you were smart, at least book smart, and then you could probably publish something, and maybe somebody would buy it. Hands up if you have a Facebook profile in the room. Well, we're all publishers. Every time we change our status, we're publishing information. We're adding to the critical mass of information that is out there. You know, whether or not it's valuable is a whole other question that bears consideration. But, you know, when the Kardashians change their perfume and everybody knows about it, they're adding to the body of information. Is it valuable to most people? Probably not. But they're publishing. Anybody who has access to the internet and has a computer and has a thought, as long as they think it's important, they become publishers. It's very democratic. You see what's happening over in Egypt. What do they do? What does the government do almost the second or third day of the sunrise? Kill internet access, kill cell phone access. Kill communication, you kill the sharing of ideas. I don't think, but I heard on my way up on the radio, there were still reports coming out leaking out. It's been harder, but they're never going to, I think, remove the ability of people to converse and trade ideas and that sort of thing. So we all have a role in adding to information, whether or not it's valid, whether or not it's useful information. That's for people to read, consider, decide on their own. This is probably the cornerstone of your teaching practice, next to your knowledge of curriculum and solid awareness of methodology. If you don't have good relationships with your students, you will not be successful as a teacher. You just won't. So, we're in the ultimate people business. If you don't, and I'm not saying you have to buddy with every single kid. You need to know where they're at, what makes them tick. Know that in a class of 30, you're never going to have all 30 kids, lined up in the same headspace at any given time through probably a week, a day, a year, 4 years in high school, or whatnot. They're interesting creatures, and you have to appreciate that and do your best to get to know them. And you know what? The more time you spend on this, the more time you'll have to really take risks with the curriculum, with your methodology, those sorts of things. Time and again, because I don't teach tech very much anymore, I'm on the road a lot, but I've completely flamed out in a lesson, and standing there and say, you know what? Ladies and gentlemen, that can go to okay. No, sir, don't ever do that to us again. They'll tell you, because they're comfortable letting you know that I can serve their needs. And I'm comfortable with them giving me feedback. You've got to establish that relationship with kids. You must. Because all of the technology in the world layered over top of lousy curriculum knowledge and poor methodology is not going to make for a good lesson. I'd say that some people would describe that as most teenage life. Just with respect to technology. But again, that comes from a lack of appreciation of where kids place technology on their hierarchy of needs. It's up there, right next to oxygen. Right? And so we, as teachers, I'm not saying you have to change your philosophy regarding technology, but you may have to appreciate how kids use it, why kids use it, and try and at least understand what role it plays in their lives. Because if you ignore that, you're going to be struggling against the massive kids you're going to be encountering throughout your career. Any Northerners here? Good, so you'll appreciate this next video. It's one of my favorites. But I mentioned that, the flame out during a lesson that didn't go so well, in spite of planning. Well, it might be coming up next place for your career. You'll be standing up when the kids have left your room, and maybe out loud, maybe in your head, you're going to be saying the same thing that the camera. I'm going to have to fix that the next time, so I'm not doing that again. So in spite, that guy took a big risk. Pulled up to the edge, thought for a second, okay, I can do this. And obviously, it didn't work out so well. That doesn't mean you don't try it again. You just try it differently next time. But if you hit the tree the next time, it's time to change your direction a little bit. Buy a boat. With apologies to Sarah Palin. Democrats in the room. And again, I talk about the foundations of good teaching, and again, technology is a good tool, but if it's not the most appropriate, if it's not going to further a student's progress, if it's not going to add to the experience of teaching and learning, then you should use it. And lots of technology, a smart board, a projector, a GPS, a tablet, it's not going to replace lousy planning and poor consideration of methods and a lack of a relationship with your students. It just won't. It'll look flashy as you smash into the tree. Right? And they're not going to learn anything. So it's your job to, on the basis of good methodology, curriculum knowledge, knowledge of the technology, to put something together that does work. And reflect a lot. You might be having those OSH moments. Use those to get better. A little better this time.
Perfect timing.
Those are some of the sources, and I've made the PowerPoint available. The one that I sent, Miley, I think,
Yep.
I've reorganized the slides a little bit,
Okay.
so I'll send you the new one.
Sure.
These ladies have my email address. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them by email. And as a closing to this afternoon's little chit-chat, I want to, first of all, wish you the best of luck. You've chosen a spectacular school. I'm not just saying that because I'm an alumnus. I think I was still a clerical error, but I'll take it. You've chosen a wonderful profession and occupation, because whether or not you choose to stay in the classroom or move on to administration or take your teaching experience and qualifications to do some other job, the stuff you learn here can be used all over the planet in almost any setting. I commend you for considering teaching as a career, and I wish you tremendous luck with you and your kids.